Catherine stepped off the wagon in the dark, and the cold hit her like a slap. The wooden gates of Pine Ridge Ranch stood tall and silent, like they were guarding a world that did not want her. She held a small bundle tight to her chest, the only things she owned inside it: 2 patched dresses, a faded ribbon, and her grandmother's wooden cross. 4 days ago, her own father had signed papers that sold her for 6 years. $300. Enough to save the family store and keep him out of prison. Not enough to save her. The wagon wheels creaked away, leaving her alone in front of the gates. Catherine's boots sank into the hard ground. Her stomach twisted with fear and shame. She was 19 and had never left her little mining town of Copper Creek. Now she stood in Colorado's mountain shadow, staring at the biggest ranch house she had ever seen. She told herself to breathe. She told herself not to cry. Crying never changed anything. A lantern swung on the other side of the gate. A foreman opened it and looked her up and down like she was a tool he had bought. He nodded once and led her inside. The ranch smelled of pine, wet wood, and horses. The main house rose ahead, wide and heavy, built strong, like it planned to outlive everyone who walked through its doors. On the porch above, a man stood watching. Even in the low light, he looked large, still as stone. Catherine felt his eyes on her, and for a moment her steps slowed. She could not see his expression clearly, but she could feel the weight of it. Like judgment. Like pain. Like something that had been buried for years and did not want to be touched again. A sturdy, middle-aged woman stepped out of the doorway. Her black dress was plain and sharp, and her mouth looked like it had forgotten how to smile. "Is this the new maid?" she asked, her voice hard. "Yes, ma'am," the foreman said. The woman gave Catherine a cold stare. "Another mouth to feed? Come in, girl. I'm Mrs. Henderson, the housekeeper. Here, you obey my orders without question." Catherine nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Henderson turned and walked inside, and Catherine followed. The hallway was wide, with clean floors and tall walls. It felt like a place meant for people who had never been hungry. Mrs. Henderson spoke while she walked, like she was reading a list she had said 100 times before. "You wake at 5. Your duties include cleaning, washing linens, kitchen help, and serving meals. You move fast and you stay quiet. Don't speak to Mr. Donovan unless he speaks to you first. Don't look directly at him." Catherine's throat tightened. "Yes, ma'am." They went down a set of stairs, away from the warm light. The servant quarters smelled damp. The walls were plain. The floor was dirt. Mrs. Henderson opened a door and pointed. "This is your room." It was barely a room at all. A narrow bed. A small window. Air that felt cold even without wind. Catherine set her bundle on the bed and swallowed the lump in her throat. She had slept in worse places in Copper Creek when her family's money ran thin. Still, this felt different. This was not poverty. This was being placed where she belonged, as if she had no right to hope for more. Mrs. Henderson did not wait. "Kitchen, now!" The kitchen was already alive with noise and heat. 3 maids moved fast, setting out dishes, stirring pots, cutting bread. Mrs. Henderson's voice cracked like a whip over them. Catherine was pushed to the sink with a pile of pots. "Wash," Mrs. Henderson said. "And don't be slow." The water was cold, so cold it made Catherine's hands burn. She scrubbed until her fingers turned red. She kept her eyes down. She listened. That was how you survived. Listen more than you speak. A thin, older maid leaned close and spoke softly. "I'm Martha," she said. "Mr. Donovan takes breakfast at 7 sharp. If the table isn't perfect, Mrs. Henderson makes us go without eating." Catherine nodded. "Thank you." Martha gave her a tired look. "Just don't draw attention." That's the best way. Catherine worked faster. She tried to be small. She tried to be invisible. But the ranch did not let her forget she was new. Every small mistake earned a sharp word. Every pause earned a glare. Mrs. Henderson watched like a hawk, waiting for a reason to prove Catherine did not belong. Catherine was so focused on the pots that she did not notice the kitchen suddenly fall quiet. Even the stove seemed to crackle softer. Martha's eyes widened, the other maids froze. A deep voice filled the doorway. "Mrs. Henderson!" Catherine's spine went stiff. Mrs. Henderson straightened fast. "Yes, sir." "I need you to prepare my saddlebags," the voice said. "I'm riding to Denver tomorrow." Catherine's hand stopped moving. She felt the air change, like the room had lost breath. She lifted her eyes without meaning to, and she saw him. Lemule Donovan stood in the doorway, tall and broad, wearing a dark coat like it was part of him. His hair was dark with gray at the temples. His beard was trimmed. His eyes were brown, but so deep they looked almost black. His face carried severity, but there was something else too, a tired sadness that did not match his strength. For an instant, his gaze met Catherine's. Mrs. Henderson hissed under her breath, "Lower your eyes, maid." Quote. Catherine looked down at once, her cheeks burning. Her heart hammered so loud she feared everyone could hear it. Lemuel's boots stepped into the kitchen. Catherine could see the edge of his shadow on the floor. "New girl?" he asked. Mrs. Henderson spoke quickly. "Yes, sir. Just arrived." There was a pause. Then Lemuel's voice came again, closer. "What's your name?" The question shocked the kitchen into a deeper silence. Catherine's mouth went dry. She was not sure if she was allowed to answer. Mrs. Henderson's eyes cut at her like a knife. Catherine forced the words out. "Catherine, sir. Catherine Jane Miller." "Look at me when you speak," Lemuel said. Her breath caught. Slowly, she raised her eyes. His gaze was steady, not angry, curious, like he was trying to see something under the dirt and fear. "How old are you?" he asked. 19, sir." "From where?" "Copper Creek, sir. A mining town 3 days from here." Lemuel's eyes did not leave her face. "How did you end up here?" The truth sat in her chest like a stone. She could lie. She could say she wanted work. She could pretend. But something in his gaze made pretending feel useless. "My family needed money, sir," she said quietly. "I came to work to pay a debt." For a moment, Lemuel's face did not move. Then something flickered in his eyes, too fast to name. He nodded once, slow. "I hope you work with dedication," he said. "This house has strict rules, but those who work well are treated fairly." He turned to leave. His shadow slid across the floor and disappeared. When he was gone, the kitchen exhaled all at once, like it had been holding its breath. Whispers started, quick and sharp. Martha leaned close to Catherine again, her voice low. "You were lucky," she said. "Mr. Donovan rarely speaks to maids. He never asks names." Catherine looked back at the doorway where he had stood. Her hands were still wet, but they did not shake now from cold. They shook from something else. Because for the first time since her father signed those papers, someone had looked at her like she was a person. And Catherine did not know if that small kindness would save her in this house, or destroy her. Catherine's first days at Pine Ridge Ranch felt like a long storm that never ended. She woke before sunrise, when the mountains were only dark shapes against the sky. The cold cut through her thin dress, and the work started before her body was fully awake. Buckets of water, heavy linens, floors that seemed to stretch forever, and pots that never stopped piling up. Mrs. Henderson watched her like she was waiting for Catherine to fail. If a cushion sat even a little crooked, Catherine had to redo the whole room. If a sheet had the smallest stain, dinner was taken away. If she was 1 minute late, her tiny rest time vanished. Catherine learned fast that in this house, kindness was rare, and mistakes were expensive. The other maids were not the same with her. Martha sometimes whispered advice, but only when Mrs. Henderson was not near. Rebecca, younger but already worn down by years of work, treated Catherine like she was invisible. Grace, older and bitter, seemed to enjoy every hard moment Catherine faced. "You won't last," Grace said one afternoon while Catherine struggled up the servant stairs with a bucket of hot water. "This house breaks girls like you. They run away, or they leave in shame." Catherine said nothing. Silence was safer, but inside her something stubborn stood up straight. She had nowhere else to go. Her family had made that clear, and the contract tied her to this place for 6 long years. Lemuel left for Denver the next day, and the house felt less tense without his shadow. Yet his name still ruled everything. His breakfast hour, his study, his rules. Catherine worked harder than ever, because she feared Mrs. Henderson would use any small excuse to throw her out and call her a failure. 5 days later, horses thundered into the yard. Mrs. Henderson turned sharp and loud, ordering the house to look perfect. She pointed at Catherine with a stiff finger. "You," she said, "fetch fresh water and prepare the basin in Mr. Donovan's study." Catherine froze. The study was not a place common maids were sent. But Mrs. Henderson was busy and impatient. Catherine carried the water carefully, her heart beating fast, and stepped into the room. It was the finest room she had ever seen, tall bookshelves from floor to ceiling, a heavy desk, dark green chairs. The air smelled like leather and old paper. But what caught her breath was the portrait above the fireplace. A beautiful woman looked down from the frame, dark hair, calm eyes, a soft smile. She wore a blue silk dress, and the way she was painted made her feel almost alive. "My wife!" Catherine jumped so hard the basin nearly slipped. Lemule stood in the doorway, quiet as a shadow. Catherine's face burned. "Forgive me, sir," she said. "I was only doing what I was told." Lemule walked in, his eyes on the portrait. "Mary," he said softly, like the name was both comfort and pain. Then he spoke again, steady, almost too steady. "Mary Catherine Walsh died 7 years, 4 months, and 21 days ago." Catherine did not know what to say. She did not even know why he was telling her this. Lemuel's gaze stayed fixed on the portrait, but his voice carried the weight of a life that had cracked in half. "It was an afternoon like this," he said. "She was mending a shirt for the child we expected. She laughed at something I said. Then she held her belly and her smile turned into pain. The doctor came. It did not help. The child was stillborn, and Mary was gone 4 hours later. The silence in the study felt heavy enough to crush a person. Catherine could barely breathe. She should have stepped back. She should have kept her place. But the words came from her before she could stop them. "Why are you telling me this, sir?" Lemuel's eyes finally moved to her. "Maybe because you don't look at me with pity," he said. "When you looked at me that first day, I saw someone who understands losing." Catherine's throat tightened. The truth slipped out, honest and raw. "I lost my mother when I was 13, she said. "A fever took half my town, and I lost my freedom when my father sold me to pay debts. So yes, sir, I understand loss." Something in Lemuel's face shifted. Not a smile, not softness, but a crack in the wall he kept around himself. He nodded once. "You may go, Catherine," he said, "and thank you for listening." After that day, something changed in the air between them. Catherine noticed his eyes on her more often, in hallways, across the dining room, through doorways. It was never bold, never improper, but it made her uneasy in a way she could not explain. She felt seen, and she did not know if being seen was a gift or a danger. Mrs. Henderson noticed too. One evening she caught Catherine near the stairwell and grabbed her arm hard enough to hurt. "Don't get above yourself," she hissed. "You think being young gives you power. You are nothing. If I suspect you're trying to trap Mr. Donovan, I'll make your life here a living hell." Catherine's eyes stung. "I'm not trying anything, ma'am," she whispered. But Lemuel began to appear in small, quiet moments. One morning he stepped into the library while Catherine dusted and placed a slim poetry book on the table. "You should read this," he said simply, then walked out. Another day he found her in the back garden, where she had pressed a few wildflower seeds into the soil near the fence. He stood beside her, looking down at the tiny patch of earth. "My wife loved flowers," he said. "She said they were hope, something beautiful that grows even when everything around feels dead." Catherine's chest ached at his words. She wanted to speak, but fear held her quiet. Still, a strange warmth started to grow in her, the kind of warmth she had not felt since she left Copper Creek. Then came Saturday night. Catherine was washing the dinner dishes when she heard music from the main parlor. A piano, slow and sad, filled the house like a cry that could not be held back. She dried her hands and walked without thinking, her feet moving on their own. She stopped at the parlor entrance and saw Lemuel at the upright piano. His large hands moved with surprising care. His eyes were closed. Tears ran down his face, and he did not wipe them away. He looked like a man alone in a room full of ghosts. Catherine should have turned back, she knew that. But the music pulled something from her, something older than fear. Her mouth opened, and she began to sing, soft at first, then stronger. It was a simple song her mother used to hum while sewing. It carried grief, but it carried hope too. Lemuel's hands stopped. He turned to her, startled. And for one awful second, Catherine thought she had ruined everything. Then he faced the keys again and began to play, changing the melody to follow her voice. For a few minutes, the house held something it had not held in years. Not just sorrow, but a kind of shared truth. A widowed mountain man and a souled maid, turning pain into music. When the last note died, the silence felt alive. Lemuel looked at her like he did not know what to do with what he felt. "You have a beautiful voice," he said. Catherine's hands shook. "I'm sorry, sir. I shouldn't have." "Don't apologize," he said, his voice low. "Tonight you changed something." But the walls of Pine Ridge had ears. The next morning, Catherine found Mrs. Henderson waiting with a tight, proud look. "Your things are packed," she said. "You're leaving today." Catherine's stomach dropped. "Why?" "You forgot your place," Mrs. Henderson snapped, singing in the parlor like some fine lady. Catherine's lips parted, but no words came. Then a voice cut through the air, cold and sharp as a blade. "Mrs. Henderson." Lemuel stood in the doorway, his eyes dark. "May I know what is happening here?" he asked. Mrs. Henderson lifted her chin. "I was dismissing the maid, sir. She has been behaving inappropriately." "In what way?" Lemuel asked. "She is disrespectful. Lazy." "That's a lie," Catherine blurted, the fear finally turning into heat. "I work from dawn until night." The room went still. Lemuel's gaze moved from Catherine to Mrs. Henderson. "Catherine will stay," he said. "She will not be dismissed." Mrs. Henderson's face tightened, pale with anger. "And I judge differently," Lemuel said, his voice hard. "She will not be punished for having a voice and using it." Catherine stood frozen, her heart pounding. She had just been spared, but she felt the danger growing, not fading, because now she knew something that frightened her more than Mrs. Henderson's hate. Lemule Donovan had chosen her, and in Pine Ridge Ranch, choices like that never came without a price. The days after Lemuel defended Catherine were thick with tension. Mrs. Henderson did not forgive, and she did not forget. She gave Catherine the heaviest work, the coldest water, the worst hours. Catherine did everything without complaint, because she knew one wrong step could still send her away. But the house had changed. The other maids watched her differently now. Grace's looks turned sharp with hate, and whispers followed Catherine through the halls like dust. Mrs. Henderson leaned close one afternoon, her voice low and cruel. "They are saying you trapped him. They are saying you want his name and his land. Keep walking into his shadow, and you will burn." Catherine tried to keep her head down, but Lemuel began to seek her out in quiet places. He stepped into the library while she dusted shelves and left a small poetry book on the table without a word. Another day he found her behind the house, where she had planted wildflower seeds near the fence. "My wife loved flowers," he said softly. "She said they were hope, something that grows even when everything feels dead." Catherine felt that hope stir inside her, and it scared her. Hope made people careless. 4 weeks later, Pine Ridge Ranch turned busy with preparations. Lemuel had announced a gathering for the territory's elite. Martha whispered that it meant he was stepping back into society. Some even guessed he might consider marriage again, like his grief was something to be packed away. On the night of the gathering, wagons rolled in with fine guests. Women in silk dresses and men in suits filled the parlor with laughter that did not reach their eyes. Catherine carried a tray of drinks through the room, moving like a shadow. Near a column, she heard two women speaking, their words sharp and easy. "Mr. Donovan is finally returning to society," one said. "And that means he will need a proper wife," the other replied. "My Elizabeth would be perfect, but I heard there's a maid here who thinks she matters." Catherine's face went hot. She kept her eyes down and walked away, but the words stayed with her like poison. In a quiet hallway, she felt Lemule's presence behind her. "Don't listen to them," he said. Catherine turned, her voice trembling. "They are not wrong to think the way they think. I am a maid, sir. Any kindness you show me becomes a story they twist." His eyes held hers. "If I say your company has been the only thing that makes this house bearable, what would you say then?" Catherine swallowed, tears burning. "I would say it will make everything worse." He took a step closer. "The heart does not obey reason, Catherine." Footsteps echoed. Mrs. Henderson appeared at the end of the hall, her eyes hard with suspicion. Catherine felt the walls closing in. Even kindness had become danger. Mrs. Henderson's revenge came 3 days later. She called Catherine into her small office and smiled without warmth. "I have a special task," she said. "The library must be reorganized, every book removed, cleaned, and returned in order. You will work alone. 10 days. Maybe more." Catherine understood at once. It was a trap. Long hours alone in the same room as Lemuel would feed the rumors Mrs. Henderson wanted. But Catherine had no choice. Refusing would mean dismissal. The next morning, she began. The library was huge, filled with books in English and other tongues. Catherine worked in silence, climbing a ladder, wiping dust from old spines, returning each one carefully. Lemuel entered around 9 with papers in his arms and stopped when he saw her. "Catherine, why are you here?" "Mrs. Henderson ordered it, sir," she said, keeping her eyes down. "I can return later." "No," he said quickly. "Continue." "I will not bother you." But it was impossible not to notice each other in that room. The air felt tight. Catherine could feel his eyes drift toward her, and she hated how her heart answered. On the 4th day, she found a book of poems and whispered the title as she read it. "Leaves of Grass," Lemuel said softly. "Read it." Quote. Catherine's voice shook at first, then steadied. When she finished, her eyes stung. "You miss your town," he said. "Every day," she admitted. "But my father sold me like cattle. The home I miss is not the one that was real. It is the one I wish existed." Lemuel's face softened. Mary used to say, "Home is not a place, it is a feeling." Neither of them saw Grace listening outside the door. That afternoon, Mrs. Henderson went to Reverend Thomas with a worried face and a story made of lies. She spoke of temptation and low morals, of a maid using poetry to trap a grieving man. The Reverend came to Pine Ridge with a hard heart and a holy voice. He met Lemuel in the study. "I have heard troubling reports," Reverend Thomas said. "This closeness with your maid is improper. A man of your standing cannot be led by a girl of inferior class." Lemuel rose slowly, his eyes dangerous. "You know nothing about Catherine." "You are being bewitched," the Reverend insisted. "People talk. Trade will suffer. Your reputation will fall." Lemuel slammed his hand on the desk. "Enough. She was kind to me. She treated me like a human being, not a title. If that is a crime, then the sickness is not hers. It is yours." Catherine heard about the Reverend's visit from Martha, and fear settled deep in her bones. When the church joined the Whispers, things did not end politely. They ended with force. That night, Catherine made a choice that broke her heart. She packed her small bundle and slipped out the back door under a sky with no moon. She walked toward the main road, alone in the cold. 2 hours passed before she heard a horse behind her. She turned, and Lemuel dismounted, his breath visible in the night. "Did you think I wouldn't notice?" he asked. Tears spilled down Catherine's face. "I need to go. My presence is destroying you." "And where will you go?" he asked. "Without money, without protection." "I will find a way," she whispered. He took her hand, firm and warm. "No, I will not let you sacrifice yourself for me." Catherine shook her head. "I am nothing. You are the mountain man of this territory. You have land and power. They will ruin you. Quote. His voice lowered. Since Mary died, I lived like a ghost. You brought color back. When I hear your voice, I remember what it means to be alive. Catherine's breath broke. You can't love me. It's not allowed. By whom? He asked. By people who preach goodness and practice cruelty? He pulled her close and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, not her lips, like a promise more than desire. Come back, he said. Face it with me. They returned to Pine Ridge at dawn. Mrs. Henderson waited on the porch, her face pleased. A walk in the middle of the night, she said sweetly. Lemuel's voice turned cold. I do not explain my movements to you. From that day, Lemuel stopped hiding his attention. In Sunday service, he walked to the back bench where Catherine tried to sit and held out his hand. Sit with me, he said. Silence fell over the chapel. Catherine's hands shook, but she took his hand and sat beside him in the front pew. Reverend Thomas preached about temptation, but his eyes burned with anger. After that, the attack became sharp and steady. Letters appeared under Catherine's pillow, inside her apron, nailed to her door. They called her shameless. They called her a spellcaster. They warned her to fall. One night, Catherine brought the crumpled letters to Lemuel's study and placed them on his desk. His face darkened as he read them. This ends now, he said. I will fire anyone who is part of it. No, Catherine said. That will only confirm what they want to believe. He stepped closer and took her hands. Then we ended another way. Marry me. The room went still. Catherine stared at him. That would be social death. I would rather live honestly than die slowly, he said. I am not asking out of pity. I am asking because I see a future with you. Catherine trembled. I need time. I understand, he said, but know this. I do not want to lose you. While Catherine struggled with the choice, Mrs. Henderson went farther than Catherine thought possible. She gathered the most powerful families and planted lies like seeds, saying Catherine had a history of seducing men and had trapped Lemuel in grief. 4 days later, a delegation arrived at Pine Ridge. Reverend Thomas, traders, property owners, and their wives walked into the parlor as if they owned it. Mrs. Henderson stood behind them like a proud handler. Reverend Thomas spoke first. Send the girl away today. If you refuse, there will be consequences. A commercial boycott. No credit. No trade. Catherine listened from the hallway, her heart pounding. She realized then that there was no quiet way out. Not anymore. If she ran, they would still control the story. If she stayed silent, they would crush them both. She stepped into the parlor. All heads turned. I am the maid, Catherine said, her voice steady. Poor. Sold by my family. And because my presence has become a weapon, I was ready to leave. Triumph flickered on a few faces, but Catherine lifted her chin. Before I go, you will know this, she said. Mr. Donovan has treated me with dignity. He has never disrespected me. If you call that scandal, the problem is not him. It is you. Reverend Thomas bristled. Mrs. Victoria's mouth tightened. Catherine kept going. You speak of order, but you use it to hide cruelty. You speak of faith, but you came here with threats. You do not want what is right. You want control. The room froze. Lemuel stepped beside her and took her hand. His voice filled the parlor like thunder. She is right, he said, and I am ashamed it took me so long to see it. If my business suffers because I chose truth, then let it suffer. If my friends leave because they value my title more than my soul, then they were never friends. The delegation left with cold vows. The boycott began at once. When the door closed, Catherine's strength finally shook. You didn't need to do that, she whispered. I was not ready to let you go, he said. Later that night, Catherine found him in his study and met his eyes without fear. Your proposal, she said softly, is it still standing? It is, he said. Catherine took a breath that felt like stepping off a cliff. Then my answer is yes. They married 4 weeks later in a simple courthouse ceremony. Catherine in a plain blue dress Martha helped sew. Lemuel kissed her gently, like the first real breath after years underwater. When they returned, the loyal workers welcomed her with wildflowers at the gate. But the price came fast. The bank demanded payment. Contracts vanished. Lemuel told Catherine they had 4 months before the ranch could be taken. Catherine did not break. "Then we go to Denver," she said. "We find buyers who don't care about gossip." In Denver, doors shut at first. People recognized Lemuel's name and judged him. Then Catherine pushed him to try a different way. "Stop using your title," she said. "Let the product speak." It worked. A German importer tasted their sample and nodded with respect. 1 contract became 4. 4 became enough to pay the debts and keep Pine Ridge alive. When they returned, the air at the ranch felt lighter without Mrs. Henderson's shadow. Martha ran the house with firm kindness. Slowly, Pine Ridge not only survived, it grew stronger. Catherine became more than a maid who married up. She became a partner, a leader, a woman who changed the way people were treated on that land. 2 years later, Catherine carried a child. Lemuel's fear rose like old ghosts, but Catherine held his hands and made him look at her. "I am not your past," she told him. "This will be different." On a bright winter afternoon, their daughter was born healthy and strong. They named her Mary Hope to honor the woman Lemuel lost and the future they fought for. Years later, Catherine stood on the porch and watched her little girl run through the wildflowers. Lemuel came behind her and wrapped his arms around her, his chin resting on her shoulder. "What are you thinking?" he asked. Catherine leaned into him. 6 years ago, I was a terrified girl sold like cattle, and now I have a home." Lemuel held her tighter. "You built it," he said. Mary Hope ran up with a small bouquet in her hands, smiling like the sun. "Mama, Papa, look," she said. "I picked these for you." Catherine took the flowers and pulled her child close. In that moment, she finally believed the truth. Some people never stopped judging. Some doors stayed closed. But Catherine and Lemuel had learned what mattered. Not titles, not gossip, not the cruel rules of the frontier. Only dignity, only courage, and the kind of love that refused to bow.